The brutally honest review of PoE 2. The game's been out for a few days now. People have played it, put in some time, and let's see what they got to say. Here we go. Brutally honest. Savagely honest.
Okay, so I've been playing Path of Exile. If I type /play, the amount of time I have in it is 1 day, 22 hours.
God damn! But to be fair, I have 3 characters. I probably put a lot of hours into myself. That's a lot.
52 minutes. I am playing Titan Warrior, which is kind of known for being one of the slower classes. I am in maps. I've done a decent amount of maps. I have not killed like the Giga Pinnacle boss. I don't think anyone in the world literally has at this point. I've got a build that like I'm somewhat enjoying, and I've been trying some of these maps and the map mechanics. All I've got a general feeling about how I feel about the game at the moment, my progression, and I've been seeing a decent amount of feedback, which I think there's actually correct feedback currently happening with the current state of the game. So let's break it down. Let's first talk about the things I like a lot, and then let's talk about the things I do not like so much. So the first thing that I'm going to say is I very much enjoyed the campaign. I feel like the campaign, in my opinion, out of every ARPG I've played, is the best experience. I think there are feedback points that I've seen that you can depend upon how you feel about it being difficult and people quitting in the campaign. I, for one, enjoyed the difficulty level of the campaign, but we will talk about why some of that difficulty and frustration is happening, as there are some very valid feedback points related to that that we'll get to in the cons in just a moment. So one of the first...
I think that the pacing for Act 2 and 3 is a lot slower than Act 1, and I think that the size of Act 1 would be better for the other acts as well, especially Act 3. I think Act 3 is probably 2 or 3 times longer than Act 1. But otherwise, I mean, if you want to look at like the actual content and the bosses and like the gameplay, I think it's very good.
Things, campaign's absolutely fantastic. I think the visuals of the game are probably the best I've seen in any ARPG.
Yeah.
I think the skills look fucking awesome. Like, that's just one example of one right there. I'm using Sunder as a warrior, and I find it very satisfying. Shout out to the people doing the music design, Camille and his team, as the music is awesome.
Music is fucking insane. It's so good.
So phenomenal.
Yeah, it's not
and the
even
people
a question.
doing the audio engineering, you just listen to this.
Yeah.
Just sounds good. Sounds good, looks good. The game seems what I would consider, what should be considered like AAA quality in terms of production. Okay. In terms of understanding the game, in terms of how things actually play out, it is explained significantly better. You can go in the game and actually hover your mouse over.
This is also a huge improvement. And the fact that you can do this saves people so much time. I feel like if I put my cursor over his cursor, I feel like we're holding hands. I'm gonna change that. Anyway, yes, I completely agree with this. This makes it so easy to immediately understand what's going on, because like you can see attack, war cry, empowers, everything makes sense, and it's immediately verifiable in game. Huge improvement.
Attacks, charges, it explains it all to you. They also have, when you're trying to craft a gem, like some recommended setups, etc. It's now sorted by weapons instead of class. You can understand that certain weapons, do certain things. Not all of these are actually built out yet. There is a significant amount of content still coming into the game. The passive tree, in my opinion, is simpler than Path of Exile.
It is not simpler. It is infinitely simpler. They've removed, in my opinion, 80% of the complexity. And one of the biggest things that they did to make the passive tree easier to do is they removed the amount of defenses that the passive tree has. Because a big issue that I think a lot of people had with their understanding of the passive tree is how to reconcile +5 life versus +10 damage. And now that it's focused primarily on on damage and functionality, rather than balancing between life and damage, I think it makes it much easier for a player to make decisions. I think that the talent tree at this point in PoE 2, maybe I'm a fucking idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think it's approachable to a new player. I do. I think it is approachable. And like me going into it, I just read the talents. I say, okay, all right, we're going to go here. We're going to go there. We're going to make this decision. We're going to do this. It is fucking amazing. I don't think they get enough credit for this. Where everybody talks about the music, the bosses, the talent tree improvements that they've made Absolute fucking virtuoso wizard level design. Great decision. And even here's another thing that's stupid. The crossbow talent tree on the it looks like a crossbow. Nice.
I saw some people saying that it looks, more complicated. They're bigger, than Path of Exile 1. I think it's actually fairly simple. Most of these nodes are just like simple percentage increases.
Extremely simple.
There are still like key notables.
Look at that. Look at that, dude. That's the example. Wait a second. Fire. That's the fire tree. You can tell because it looks like fire. It's fire. There's a hammer. That's it. Yeah, there's a hammer right there. That's the hammer tree. How can you tell? Because it's a hammer. Look, it gives hammer notes. Easy.
Like key notables that fundamentally change the way your character can function. But for the most bit, I think this is significantly more accessible.
Shield
so another pro in the game, in my opinion, is the ability for people to pick up the game that have not played Path of Exile before and enjoy the game. I have streamed.
I have to say, too, that if you look at the retention for the game right now, the retention for PoE 2 is absolutely fucking phenomenal. To have such a hardcore ARPG that is in early access, peaking at over 400 and at some point on the weekend over 500,000 concurrent players, this is a transformative level of success that PoE 1 has never seen. Like, it's actually an insane breakout success that is, like, just totally fucking, this is their most popular league they've ever had. As far as I know, Settlers of Calgar, and on Steam, it only had 200,000 players. And this is not even counting. They have a launcher too, which has a lot of players, including myself. Like, I'm not counted in that list. I love it, and I've never played PoE 1. Yeah. Is it on? Yes, and it is on console. You can play it on PS5.
Other than like just a few hours of sleep here and there, I basically stream this game nonstop since the beginning. The majority of the people that I have seen that are playing this game that are in my chat have been saying that they are able to at least understand it. It is not the same response I'm seeing from Path of Exile 1 where people pick it up and they're like, I don't even know what's going on, and they don't want to play it. So you have basically a breakdown of visual and audio that sucks people in, pretty good boss fights and campaign, and then they actually...
Here's another really small thing. Visual signposting, like visual indicators, audio indicators. Cirrus says die, oh fuck. Okay, I've got to run to this direction, right? One thing that PoE 2 did extremely well is that it plays the sound when a dangerous effect is going to happen. It's like that, and it's like, oh shit, he's red. That helps so much.
Explain things to you. My buddy Kyer, he drove out here in order to be able to play with me as well. We did a LAN party, and he's completely blind to the game. He didn't look up guides or anything like that. He played Path of Exile for like a few hours, and Path of Exile 1 doesn't really know anything. And he was blasting through the campaign. I mean, arguably he was going faster than I was. Obviously, he's using Mercenary, but still, he
wasn't playing a warrior, is what he's saying.
Going very fast. Chat says they thought he was doing fantastic. He streamed for a few hours over here. And, he says that he didn't look anything up and he was able to just pick it up with basic knowledge of the game as well. So I've seen first.
It's self-evident. Projectile damage makes projectiles do more damage. There are a few things that I think are a little bit confusing. Like maybe attack speed in some cases can be confusing. But overall, it's so well designed. And they removed a lot of the, you're using two ways of solving the same problem situations.
And people new to the game, they've only played some ARPGs, being able to understand it. So I think that is one solution they have done with the game that is vastly improved. Now, I will say that when we start getting to understanding the game, etc., that part of the reason that we probably are seeing it being a little bit easier to understand is, in my opinion, your amount of variety in terms of skills build are more limited now. If we go this,
you don't have the skill gem requirements where like every what do you call it, support gem has levels to it and a bunch of shit. You also don't have to deal with divergent, or I forgot the other word for it, alternative, basically like alternative gem types. There are a lot of complexities that PoE 1 had that this game effectively just resets, and it makes it easier and more approachable. Yeah, you don't have to worry about reservations. Like, Spirit is much more straightforward. The reservations don't cannibalize your mana. It's just so many massive improvements. It's incredible.
Support gems, they have recommended that shows, but if we show like all gems here, there's actually
flasks.
Not that many support gems. This looks like a lot, but like it's actually not that.
It's not that many. It's like compared to PoE 1, this is like probably a third of like the amount of options in PoE 1. It's not even close.
Crazy, to be honest, especially when you start considering like I'm using melee. So if I just type in like melee or something, then we start seeing that there's not like actually just a whole ton of support gems in
to be fair, that's because it's not finished, and there will be more when the game comes out. Because again, like less than half of the ascendancies are available and only half of the classes are available. But
system. So when you look through the options, it's like, okay, maybe I have 10 valid options for something I'm using. That's fairly manageable as opposed to like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, or, you know, or something like that. So that's part of the reason I think it's more easy to understand. There was a concept called bloat and Path of Exile went from 10 years of content being created, and there's just basically less options currently available.
This is what I want them to do for WoW, by the way. PoE 2 is everything that I want WoW 2 to be. Theoretically.
Plus, if you actually look at the way the gems work, they are broken down by weapons. There are less weapons currently in the game. They are still coming. Again, limiting your options. So it's more accessible because the variety of choice and the illusion of choice is a little bit simpler. There was a poll done a long time ago about consumer choice in which consumers are actually happier. And this isn't related to games. This is related to like products in a retail store. That when you're in a store and you're offered two options, you know, blue or red, for instance, the consumer is often more happy with that instead of like having a whole aisle of like 500 different colors. The people will come out happier with very simple options. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of a byproduct of players being able to both understand and play the game just due to, honestly, less choice. Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is true also with like selling merchandise and clothing. This is why a lot of stores online don't have a ton of options. And like we did this even with selling merch ourselves, where we limited the amount of options because we knew that if you provide too many options, people will end up buying nothing. It sounds weird, but like this is just, you know, experienced over and over.
Is not as large of a deal in this game, at least in my own personal opinion. I
Decision
think this
fatigue.
will expand out as
That's
people
right.
learn the game, and obviously as they are adding more of both these ascensions, as we have.
And here's another component. I don't know if you guys have had the same experience. I get insta-gibbed way less in PoE 2. In PoE 1, I would find like all the time my health would go from like 100% to 0 randomly. In PoE 2, that almost never happens. And that's so nice. I hated that with PoE 1. You're on maps? I'm not on maps, but I am massively undergeared for like Act 3 and Cruel. And I'm going and it's not happening. It's never happening. It's way better.
Half of the total ascensions that will be in the game, as well as more variety of weapons. So that is something that I think they've done very well. Now we're going to get into a bit of the feedback, in which I believe is correct. And I think there are some things that need to change about the game in order to keep most people, in my opinion, happy or to continue to play the game. Now, as
and like I'll tell you why, and this is the reason why the talent tree changes were such a great idea, is that, for example, back with when the way that they had to balance, like, so you have the survivability pool where it's like, basically, this is PoE 1 and this is PoE 2. The amount of defensive options and defensive tools that you have in the game, like when you have to balance the game for somebody taking all of the life nodes in the tree, you have to do things to the game that end up making it punishing for people that don't do that. But when you remove that option and you just have the PoE 2 example, you don't have to worry about it at all because you're looking at people and you're balancing for a much more narrow set of survivability solutions. And that allows you to make a game that has less tricks.
showed you earlier, if I type /play, that I have 1 day, 22 hours,
Very big
58
improvement.
minutes in
Huge
here.
improvement.
And I do have some decent gear, at least gear that I am satisfied with for the moment. I have not maxed resistances, but I have some HP, level 73. I'm able to go through my maps, etc. I am still dying, but I'm using a very, I mean, this attack takes like basically 3 seconds to hit. So what happens is I'll die to the hit, but that's sort of besides the point.
What do you expect?
I will say this. If we look at my currency and we see how much currency acquisition I currently have, I have 0 Exalt orbs. I got my first Exalt orb. If you don't know what Exalt does, it basically adds another stat line onto your rare item. This is very important, and I'll explain why later. But if you actually look at my currency, I have lots of things to make magic items and barely anything to modify rare items. So I basically right now am in a position I can craft exactly 0 pieces of gear without going out and farming. Now, in their earlier presentations and when they were explaining how the game wanted to be.
I think there's too little currency in the game. I do. I think it's much too few currency pieces.
Actually used a line in which they stated, if you're not getting multiple Exile orbs by Act 1, then we have messed up. And if that is how they actually truly feel, then in my opinion, the current balance, at least of Exile orbs in particular, they have in fact messed up. Because I was almost level 40, I believe, or almost completed with the first iteration of the campaign before I even got my first Exile orb. So because of this, the ability for me to get a rare item, like make a rare item, and I'll just show you how actually the process of making an item goes real quick, just for the people that are really like not on the same page yet. I'll just buy an item. So let's say I wanted to craft this item right here. Okay, I have this magic item. I would use this, and I made this magic. It was just a base item, so it has that. And now I'm going to add another magic step by using the augment. And then let's say I want to make that rare because I really liked it. I would use a regal. And then let's say
damn, bro, he's investing in this video. I would have never fucking done that. I would have never fucking used a regal orb like that just for the video. Never. Fuck that.
Like that.
He's going all in.
I could use Exalt orbs to add up to 3 more stat lines, so I would have a total of 6 stat lines. Well, because I got no Exalt orbs through the entirety, almost the entirety of my campaign playthrough, I didn't get the process of creating a rare item basically at all. Now there are
personally, I think this is an experience-based thing. I did numerous times, but I still think we should get a little bit more Exalt orbs because I think they're fun to use. That's it. They're just fun.
I've heard,
maybe that'd be too many.
People have told me that their experience is vastly different, that they've got multiple Exalt orbs just during the first campaign. Obviously, when you have thousands of people in the Twitch chat and they're seeing this, the people that are getting the Exalts would speak out, but there were plenty of people telling me they were having a similar experience. So the fact that I can get to that far in the game without effectively being able to do any iterations of crafting the matter made my
I think I know what Twitch might have done. I think that they put a filter on my stream where if I'm in just chatting, it doesn't matter whether I have a label on or not. They're not playing any fucking ads on my channel. And so I swapped over to the PoE category, and now they're playing ads. Did they just blacklist me from just chatting because of how much of a problem boy I am? I don't even think I'm that... Well, never mind. Anyway.
Gear acquisition feel very poor early on in the game. And because the game has not... I don't think the game is hard, but I would use the term maybe difficult in terms of boss fights, especially when you're using the class sort of like the...
It's challenging. That's what it is. It's challenging. The fights require you to, unless you have a really good build or you have like an overpowered character like my mercenary yesterday, it requires you to react to actions that the boss takes by playing the game in a certain way.
Warrior early where it can be like kind of slow, etc., then it does add a layer of frustration if you feel like you're not really getting any gear. Now, I will say another positive before I kind of continue my rant here about the currency is that the salvage bench is actually pretty cool. You get these sockets in the gear. You can
I think this salvage bench is annoying. It's unnecessary, and they should combine it with something else.
salvage it in order to get these orbs to add more sockets on the gear. So if I was crafting something like
the
this,
salvage bench and the reforge bench should be the same thing. It's unnecessary bloat, and you just put them on the same thing. And you just have the reforge bench, and then you also have a salvage button next to it. You save space, and you save time, and you consolidate systems. It's my opinion. Add in disenchanting. Yeah, basically, you should be able to disenchant, salvage, and reforge from all the same place. Yeah. I mean, again, like, let's try to make this game appealing to new players. Why is it that you can only disenchant through one singular vendor in some towns? What value does this add to the game? None. It's just annoying. It doesn't even make sense.
Weapon, I could use orbs and add 2 sockets, which are what these are doing, which allows me to pick a rune. For instance, I pick rune increased physical damage in order to do some further level of modification of a weapon. And I will say I got plenty of runes. I never have felt the need to get more runes. I pretty much had always the runes when I needed them, and instead I was locked behind these artificer shards, which again, you get 1 shard per socket that you salvage. So if you have an item that's 2, I would get 2 shards, for instance. And I actually felt like this balance was about right. You know, I felt a little bit of pressure to make sure I would get the artificers and pick up the salvage gear. But for the most bit, I didn't really run into circumstances where this was a point of frustration. I was just like, oh, good, I got one. Like, I actually get to make an orb. And I enjoyed the rune portion.
I felt like as soon as I started focusing on picking up items with sockets, my artificer's sockets or like orb problem immediately disappeared. The only reason it was a problem is that I actively was ignoring it.
I felt like this was properly balanced, in my opinion, in terms of acquisition, possession of the items, and actual addition onto the gear. This felt correct to me. So I did enjoy that part in particular. But the reality is, even though I feel like they got the orbs correctly, because I was limited on the number of yellow items in which I felt like I actually wanted to put the sockets on, I didn't really have too many of these moments, though I could have, of being able to add on and rune sockets. So I ended up having to do sockets on pieces of gear I otherwise maybe would not have wanted to, just to be able to get the resistances, etc. I do think this is where you're going to get most of your resistances. There isn't really as much, and we'll talk about essences in a moment, but early on, there's not many ways to sort of guarantee the affixes you want.
What they basically did is they removed the complexity that a lot of gear had with like high tier complexity, like influences and double influences on pieces, and like, you know, synthesis implicits and shit like that. And they instead added it to a lot of RNG, which is like so like it's still really hard to get good items, but there's more RNG involved rather than knowing all of these like esoteric systems that compound on each other, which is good. I think it's a much better solution. It's how the game used to be.
So it's much more Gamba or RNG based. This is something that I think they specifically were actually trying to have happen in the game. They mentioned many times they wanted the loot to feel impactful with the drops, and I was completely on board with this concept. Because I think very often in Path of Exile 1, something I didn't really enjoy is I'm in a map, I'm killing through some mobs, and the gear that I drop is almost inconsequential in Path of Exile 1. I'll get an item, and I'm just
totally fucking irrelevant. Completely meaningless. There's no reason to have it. Like, it's just, nobody gives a shit.
Really looking for a base where I'm like, okay, give me a good base. Maybe I can craft on that. What's this item? And almost never do the items drop that immediately it's like, that's a great item. I'm going to equip that. Like, I didn't really have that experience. I don't even think once. Okay. And so when they go out and they state that what we want is for, you know, yellow items basically to drop, and I identify the yellow item and I'm like, holy shit, that's a great item. You know, I was pretty much on board with this concept. Unfortunately, this doesn't really happen as often as you might think, because when you're actually farming, you're out here killing these mobs, the amount of yellow items that are dropping are fairly rare. Like, you do.
I think that they're not as common as maybe they should be, but I think the solution to that is not adding more rare items, but instead adding more currency to turn blue items into rare items. I think giving players agency to create their own game, their own like I'm stupid. Their own items is more fulfilling. That's what they just did. Yeah, I know.
You get them, but not enough at a point where it makes up for the
Too many
fact that
rares
your
dropping
currency
now?
is
I don't
lacking.
think so.
It's sort of a situation in which I think you have to choose which
Personally.
of the poisons they want to go. Do you want to make it where I need to craft my items up? If that's so, then we probably need more currency so I can craft more often. Also, because deterministic crafting is really more later in the game, you're basically just one time, no whammy, every time you're exalting and trying to get lucky with the affixes, which means very often by the time you're doing your, second or third exalt orb, then, the item might not be that good and you've used a lot of currency to get there and that might be the only currency you've gotten.
Right.
Therefore, you've made a borderline worthless item. So I would argue that you either need to increase the yellow drops so that you have the opportunity of receiving an item that's better. And even when you do get a yellow drop, you still need to exalt that item, or you need to upgrade the currency. Now, there's one other point in currency, and there's one other
My opinion, the best strategy, check vendors on every level up, get a blue that has 2 of your best stats or your one key stat that's rare to roll. Like, for example, +1 to the type of skills that you want, and then build off of that.
Point in currency that we should mention, which is they also mentioned something else, which is they specifically removed one of the currency items called an alteration orb. So if you don't know what an alteration orb is, then effectively it re-rolls a magic item, like basically a blue item. So let's say that I identify this and it happens to look like this. And I think, okay, I don't want this, but I like the base item that I have. You would hit it with an alteration and it would just make it like another random magic item. It would re-roll the item effectively with magic. Now they removed this because of something that would happen in Path of Exile 1. And I agree with the concept of removing this because you would sit there with a million of these orbs and you just hit it.
I did this with so many times where you're sitting there this is me making jewels. Okay, alteration, transmutation. Okay, or fucking the other that adds the second one. Okay, regal. Fuck. Okay, scour. Okay, upgrade it to magic again. Okay, alteration. Okay, it just keeps it. It's so fucking annoying. And also, if you think about it abstractly, every alteration orb is an item drop. Because that's a new version of the item that you could have received. So with the amount of loot that you would get in PoE 1, it made a lot of sense to have alterations. But in PoE 2, it doesn't as much. Chaos,
hit, and you would literally do this for up to thousands of times until you would get 2 pieces of affixes that you really like, and then
people had what were the odds of getting a tailwind on boots with an alteration? It was 1 in 300 or 500 or something like that. Who does that?
With the regal, and if that didn't work, you would scour it and do it again. But they didn't really want this to happen. They want you to just craft the item. But actually, this same concept is basically still in the game. It's just in a more annoying thing. So basically, what would happen now is, let's say I need a pair of boots, and we just happen to, let's just say these are the base boots that I need. I found these expert padded leggings. Great. These are the base pieces I need. So I'm going to add a magic there. Fire resistance. Maybe I like that. Oh, no, now it's mana. Well, I don't really need mana. I'm a warrior. I was hoping to get some life or maybe movement speed.
Get rid of it.
And I don't really think this is good enough because the fire resistance for low is too low. I'm not really going to regal this. So instead, what I'm going to do now is this item is now worthless.
Yes.
So instead, what I'm going to do is sell it and wait till I get another one of these bases.
That's right.
And I'm going to do it again.
Yes.
So effectively, the actual process of making an item is exactly the same. The only difference is instead of getting alteration orbs, we're getting 1 million base items. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to look in the vendor. I'm going to farm some more, and I'm just going to try to get another piece of gear. Okay, here, let's take this one. This has got 26 fire.
I think that they also need to remove maybe one of the trash stats. I feel like almost nobody uses things like light radius. And why do you have light radius? If this is a stat that nobody wants, why does it exist? I don't think that you need them. Yeah, just get rid of it. It's just fucking annoying. It's a cosmetic stat? Yeah.
kind of like that. So I'll go here and now I'll do this.
Garbage,
and erode,
trash. Throw it away.
energy
Throw it away.
shield and armor hybrid. Well, that's a hybrid that I can't use. Okay,
it.
well, I don't need that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do
Garbage.
another base. So effectively, your experience is spamming a bunch of base items, almost like the base items themselves are the rerolls for the alteration orbs. Now, this won't actually, again, be an issue, in my opinion, because I think there is something to be said for the experience of Path of Exile 1 crafting where you're spamming alteration orbs is not good interactive gameplay for crafting, at least in my personal experience. However,
and that's what makes PoE crafting trash stats feel a lot worse, is that you could have that in PoE 1 because you're just going through alterations like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But with PoE 2, you don't have as many currency items, so like when you get a trash stat, it's like getting kicked in the dick. It's like, fuck. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not, yeah.
Again, what they are doing is they have the drops
So unforgiving.
very limited. So even in this iteration where it's like, okay, I do actually have enough transmutes and augmentations, these are slowly piling up more and more and more because I'm getting more of these than I can use on bases that are actually like a viable solution. So it does give more value to things that are like white drops, for instance, but you're having to get a bajillion of these white drops that are actually useful, and then you craft it over and over and over again. This might be debatable for you. You might actually think that these base items and this way of crafting is acceptable, but I have found the experience in terms of acquiring the base items, then just keep constantly slamming with magic pieces over and over and over again, to more or less be the same experience that it was with alteration orbs, but now you just need, a billion white pieces.
Yes.
So that being said, those are the currency-related standpoints I see. I actually think the game is like a phenomenal game, and I think a lot of the issues I'm seeing in which people are describing they feel it's frustration, lack of progression, or too slow are coming from their inability to make items that make them feel satisfying. Because when you do...
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've played 4 characters now. I don't agree with that at all. Just get better at just get lucky. Just get better RNG. Simple. Just loot the good item. Just be good.
Get an item, it actually feels like a pretty big upgrade. If your character's too slow, craft boots with movement speed. It might take them longer than they're willing to do to get this movement speed, but maybe if they had a couple more exiled orbs every now and then, they might be willing to hit it on something like that.
Yeah.
You're not doing enough damage, craft a weapon that does some more damage. So there is, I think, the ability to speed up maybe a little bit of the process in the beginning in terms of acquiring some of the stats for people. That is up to debate. If you don't feel this way, there's a lot of people that love the game currently as it stands, and that is fair feedback, but this is very common feedback that I'm seeing related to the game. Okay, now there is one thing which, in my opinion, I don't really think is like mega debatable, to be quite honest. I think this one should just be changed. I'm willing to accept counterpoints to all my other arguments, but in my opinion, I'm 100% firm in my opinion on this one, which is when you go into maps, the in-game, okay? And you're in a map. Do you see how big this map is?
Holy shit. The maps in the game are too big. There's too much in the fucking map. It's way too fucking big.
Like the size of the maps. That's super cool. But they did a problem that Diablo 4 did, which Diablo 4 eventually changed because Diablo 4 was getting a lot of feedback related to this. And I think once people get to maps and start having to progress through this, you're going to have the same point. How you complete a map, you see how it says map complete, and you see how it says once we complete tier 3 maps. How you get the map as completed means you have to kill every rare mob on the map. This wouldn't be a big issue because you kind of want to kill rare mobs for loot anyway, but the maps are absolutely insanely massive and travel...
Oh, this is like in Warcraft 2 when you'd have to kill the last peon and he's like in the corner of the map and he's like next to a tree. You didn't... Oh, fuck. Oh. No, man.
Skills are basically removed from this game. So... if I, let's say, clear this whole map
Mm-hmm.
and there's one rare mob left, I have to go backtrack and find the mob. They have like a pity timer that happens where if you've been in the map for way too goddamn long and there's like just a couple left,
Mm-hmm.
they'll put skulls on the map to show you where the rares are. And that is a nice addition, but
They should do that when you complete the map objective. As soon as you complete the map objective, it should put the skulls on all of the other rares that are left in the map.
it does take a significant amount of time for like that to actually show up. Maybe it's something that triggers off of, only having one rare
Easy.
left. And I'm just not noticing it. But having to backtrack, like let's say the rare mob was up here and I didn't see it when I went all the way down here. And then, 30 minutes later, it shows up here or whatever with the skull. And now I have to go all the way around to find it again. They should probably make it where there's a different something that dictates about what actually completes the map. Maybe
Well, here's another component too, is like, let's just go ahead and take a copy of, we're going to go ahead and print screen and we're going to look at right here. Okay. And so this is another big issue that PoE 2 has, is its map design is based off of the movement controls of PoE 1. So in PoE 1, if I was trying to go from, I was trying to start here, I was trying to start right here, and then I needed to go right here. This is what I would do. I would go to here. I would teleport to here. And then I would go to here, and I would teleport to there. And then I would go to here, and I would teleport, I would go up to here. And then I would probably teleport to there, and then I would get there. So there are a lot of kind of dead ends that PoE 1 had, but PoE 1 didn't have a problem with dead ends because what you had instead of that is you had people that were able to just simply jump over the dead ends. You could just jump over them. So the problem was not existent. 100% hope devs listen to this. Yeah, so this is really what the difference. And you had way more movement speed. So basically, in PoE 1, traversing to getting from point A to point B would take, let's say, 10 seconds. And in PoE 2, it takes, let's say, 35 seconds. That's a big difference. Huge fucking difference. I'm equipping Leap Slam on my Ranger. Yeah, like, you shouldn't have to do that. That's stupid. But it's true it didn't account for that change. Yeah, exactly. So the problem with dead ends, like, I'm trying to think of a version, like one of the maps that I would do that with. I'm really trying to think. I don't know. And every map is absolute maze? Yeah, exactly. The tower? Moon Temple? Yes! Yes, Moon Temple. You don't have to go through each and every single one because you just whoop, whoop, whoop. No big deal. Yeah, prison cells. You don't have to worry about like, oh, finding the door for the gate. You just teleport through the gate. So much more useful.
The yellows counts as the boss for the map or something like that. So this would just stop a lot of the backtracking. And it's basically the same thing as like kill all mobs from the Diablo 4 dungeon, except the maps are significantly larger and also, kind of more maze-like. So because of that, this has been my major point that I think if this has changed, I'll be very happy about, because having to do mini maps over and over and over again and find the rare every time was like pretty annoying for me. Maybe you don't have this issue, but in in-game maps, I think some people are experiencing this. If they wanted to just like always show us where the skulls are, then it would be a skill issue because I
don't think that they should always show you what the skulls are. That's cheesy. That's so fucking cheesy. They should do it whenever you complete the map objective.
like I can just go to this area, then, up here, and then this area down here, and then this area, and I can kind of hit it in a row or something like that. I guess Fog of War sort of thing. Maybe they don't want to show that on the map, but it's just an argument to be made. Or another way of completing the map or something. But as it stands,
the skulls are the map objective? Okay, so what I think they should do, well, I already said it earlier. I mean, I don't need to repeat myself.
Part's annoying. Now, they did sort of walk back. I'm assuming this is on purpose. They did sort of walk back the bricking of the Atlas thing. So you remember where it's like, okay, I'm in this map right here and it says map in progress, right? Do you remember how if you die, you just can't go this way and you have to go around it. That's actually just not a thing anymore. So you actually, if you die, you can just do it again. But what happens is, you see how this has breach? It contains breach. If I die, then the breach that's in there goes away, and it's just the map without the additional goodies. For instance, like if there's a special boss, I like doing the ones that have bosses. So if I look around the map for, okay, you see how this one right here, that icon, that means it has like an actual unique boss with a big health pool. So if I go there and I die to the boss or something, I can reopen the map, but the boss won't be here.
Yeah.
The Delirium won't be here. I actually think this is a fair balance.
I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know. I don't like it. Yeah, it's like, how does that... So, here's the thing that I think a lot of people should ask. Why? Why add that? It's death punishment? Why? To prevent abuse? How would there be abuse? People can die to intentionally to cheese it? How? Because, like, so making a player redo a map they failed at without that objective, I feel like that would probably feel bad. You can keep redoing a super juiced map. You do the mechanic die and then redo it with zero investment. Why is investment good? You can't make arguments to these ideas without explaining why the ideas have value intrinsically. I don't know. I don't know if this is good. I really don't. Like, why is investment bad? Well, it's bad in a lot of ways. Like, you can swap gear. You don't invest into that. Like, investment could be bad because it would feel like you're locked into a certain decision, and it would make you less likely to do other things instead of that. So now, instead of actually like making a change or doing something unique, now you want to just keep doing the same thing because you're invested into it and you're locked into that decision. It's a sunken cost fallacy, exactly. And it creates a psychological effect on the player that I don't really think is healthy. You can lose an investment, simple as. Yeah, that there's an opportunity cost. Yeah, but like, why is that good? It's their vision. PoE 2 in almost most aspects is more hardcore than PoE 1. They want the game to be harder and more punishing. I think that the game should be harder. It shouldn't be more punishing. Making a game more punishing, generally, I think makes it worse. Making a game harder, I think that in a lot of cases makes a game better. I think that if you add in more challenge to a game, like for example, like you can compare Dark Souls 1 to Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, the game is a lot easier. Or sorry, in Elden Ring, the game's a lot harder in terms of like mechanics. Like compare Taurus Demon to a Crucible Knight, for example. But the difference is that with Taurus Demon, you have to, you know, go through all of these mobs, go up the stairs, go around the thing, kill the two archers in the back, and then finally you fight Taurus Demon. But with a Crucible Knight, you just, you revive at the Stake of Marika. And so, like, I think that rebalancing challenge around things that are more fulfilling and engaging than making people redo the same content over and over that they don't enjoy, I don't think that that adds a lot of value to the game. Do you see what I'm saying? Better runbacks are nice? Yeah, exactly. Like, what I'm saying is that I want harder bosses and less runbacks. Like, think about how annoying... Here's another good example. Think about how unfun raiding would be in retail WoW if you had all of the mechanics and functions from Classic. You had a 40-man raid, you had world buffs, you had everything going on, and the bosses were as hard as they are in retail WoW. You would never want to play the game. So, I think that you should never assume that something that is inconvenient is good. And you should usually assume, in my opinion, that if something is making players have to redo something that they would not ordinarily do, I would start of the default of that might not be a good thing. If they keep punishing people, people will just POB harder. Exactly. So, and this is a big issue that Lost Ark has. I said this before in WoW. if you punish players for making mistakes, players will try harder to not get punished. And if the process of that is taking away their own decision making and their own discovery of the game, and instead outsourcing it to a YouTube video or to Path of Building, then something is lost in that experience. People will avoid being punished, yeah. Does anyone disagree? I think that a lot of people, again, people place like a virtue value on like video game difficulty. It's a game. It's all easy. It's just for fun. So try to make it rewarding and fulfilling. That's the point of punishment, to make you not do that? Well, no, okay, so then it would cause you to do it, right? So like what I mean is that if I know that I only have one shot at something, I'm going to watch a YouTube video ahead of time and learn everything about the fight through the YouTube video. I think that that is a less fun experience than doing it myself and learning it through trial and error. But if I know that I only have one chance at it, I will just watch a YouTube video. That's you, not everyone, though? Really? Okay, who would do the same thing? At a certain point, systems decide what players are going to do. You're not going to rewire human psychology. If your idea of a system is we are going to do this system and implement it with no regards to how people think and how people just tend to avoid problems, all you're doing is you are designing against reality. How do you have really aspirational content? You make it hard. You make the content really hard. What do you mean? How? By making mechanics that are challenging, having things that the player has to do, having high damage checks. What do you mean? How? Like, it's obvious.
In my opinion, it doesn't brick the map. It isn't as annoying. But you have the first attempt basically gives you extra rewards, as opposed to you only have one attempt to even do the map. So I think that's sort of a healthy middle ground, and I did like this change.
I'm thinking the reason why I think it's not a good decision is that I think the parallel to it is depleted keys in Mythic Plus. What purpose do they truly serve? None. They just make the game less fun.
All in all, my take on the game is this. I think the base game and the skeleton of the game is like pretty phenomenal. I think it's
the skeleton of the game is a 10 out of 10, in my opinion. Flawless game. There are mechanics and optimization things that I think need to be changed, but on a fundamental level, this game is fucking amazing.
AAA quality and what I would consider AAA games should have.
Speaking of that, I got something yesterday. Give me a minute. Where is it? It's over here, right? No, that's not it. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. This is the most expensive hoodie I've ever bought. It's a $480 hoodie. It came yesterday. Wow. Yeah, we got that last night. I'm gonna wear it for 40 years? Yeah. Was it? Oh, it's 240? I didn't even know that. I got mine on right now. Yeah, there you go.
For its visuals, audio, etc. I do think that any of the issues currently related to the game are easy enough tweaks. I think the currency-related issue is basically a dial. You can dial it up till you hit the sweet spot.
It's all calibration.
Just, they were a little scared to dump a fuckload of currency.
Like, this is an issue that, like, a lot of games have. Like, when the skeleton of a game is broken, then I don't care about, the color of its skin. I don't care about what the hairstyle on the game is if the skeleton is fucking broken. There are a lot of games, like, for example, Throne and Liberty is a great example of this. The skeleton of Throne and Liberty is broken. The skeleton of New World is broken. These games will never truly be great because the skeleton is broken. At the very core of the game, in its DNA, it is garbage. Starfield could be good. There are games that could be good. There are some games that will never be good. The foundation.
Right into the game, right at the start. And if they need to buff up, that's better than nerfing down in a game which there's only one league and the economy's only out there one time. They probably started low on purpose, especially when we take what they said about like how the Exile should drop. I'm just not experiencing that personally.
Yeah.
Maybe you are experiencing it differently than I am. So I think they're on the safer side first and they're going to crank it up. The other part is we're only a few days into what is admittedly an early access. I don't like.
That's also a really good point, is that you can never turn loot down. You can only turn loot up. And you can never turn density down. You can only turn density up. We saw this play out in Diablo 4. And we saw them try to play it out, the opposite of that play out in the Arch Nemesis mobs in PoE 1. So yeah.
Like to use that excuse when I'm doing feedback or my takes around the state of games, but it
just
is...
like ugly women putting makeup on. Exactly. Like you can have, that's a great point. Like you can have a 3 put on makeup to become a 5, but she's never going to be a fucking 9. That's it. That's it.
A valid point here. We are a few days into this. There could be something that I'm not seeing here. They could do some changes. But I would say one of the biggest points of feedback I have seen is that people wish they had the opportunity to have crafted more gear and make more mistakes with crafting. Like I was mentioning earlier, they very specifically did a better job in the game at teaching you skill gems, how, they have the recommended here, being able to actually build out your character. They've done a better job at implementing this in order to be a way that most people can actually interact with the game. But I do think that not having any prior knowledge of crafting and learning how crafting works, you don't get enough opportunities to make mistakes early, to understand the crafting system, that by time you really need an upgrade, you have those options available to you, or at least the potential of knowing what you're doing. Really, you only get like a couple, you're only going to get a couple crafts like anytime.
Maybe it would be a good solution if in the campaign rewarded you with more crafting materials. Like, whenever you complete a quest, you get maybe an Exalted Orb or a Regal Orb. I think that would be a really good idea. Or, what would be also really cool is if they had a small quest line that would help somebody understand the nature of crafting by allowing them to craft something with 6 stats with an Exalted Orb and then fuck around with an item. And, like, a good example of this is, like, do you know, like, the bench that they give you in the Betrayal League, like the thing where like you can just like spam an item and you only have like 10 seconds to do it, and you just make it non-tradable, right? It's a non-tradable item or something like that. The hideout thing. Yeah, the trial. I think giving new players that just so they can fuck around with an item and understand it, that would probably be really useful. And then have the objective of the quest to like create an item with 6 stats and you start with a white item. I feel like that would be insanely useful, and then have a secondary one where it's like change 1 stat. Low stakes improvement learning. Yeah. And like maybe have that happen. I think what would be really cool is if they had that happen with a necklace, maybe, or a belt or a ring, because those are more universal at the end of maybe Act 1. I think that would be good. But it might have to be earlier. I don't know. A ring would be nice. Yeah, I think having 1 ring like that would be really nice. It has to be early, not the end. Yeah, it's just like maybe the ring. Maybe giving somebody a really good ring early on. Maybe that would be okay. I don't know. Maybe just give it to warriors, right? But like, yeah, before the last boss in Act 1, after you get the hooded one. That's actually a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Near the beginning of the game, and the campaign takes a long time to get through. So because of that, I think that realistically expecting newer players that are not only new to the genre, but new to the path of Exile, to be willing to play 20, 30 hours to get enough to be able to like do a few attempts at crafting gear is probably unrealistic if we're going to be bringing in new players to this genre. Now, if the counterpoint is, and I'll just say this at the end here, if the counterpoint to all of this is from the developers that, no, we disagree with you, we want this game to be very slow-paced, exceptionally difficult, we have a Dark Souls-esque, I hate to use the comparison, but it's out there all the time. This is the way we want.
I think it's accurate, to be honest. I do.
Game, then so be it. I accept it. That's what the game is. It might not be for everybody, and I will more or less tell players that ask me like, okay, is this what this game is? I'm not feeling it. I would just tell them, then this one probably isn't for you. That this game is slower paced specifically. Yeah. I believe, just due to the interviews I've seen and the communications that I've had and my experience of watching them receive feedback, that the currency problem, as well as the things like the maps with finding the rares, I think this is going to be tuned. I think these are number and balancing issues that are basically a dial. They can turn up how much drop rates, and they're just trying to hit the sweet spot. And I think as soon as they do that, we're going to see a lot of people start feeling a lot better about the game as the curve of which the difficulty ramps and the player power ramps will start being a little bit more balanced towards the player sides of things. Because let's be honest, the reason that people play ARPGs so they can go from 0 to hero and feel like a god. They don't play ARPGs so that they can have a tedious, long struggle that by the end of it, they're like, I could have just gone to work today and got the same feeling. So I think
that giving somebody a struggle to be able to overcome really hard bosses is really important, but balancing that to make it feel fulfilling is what separates a good game developer from a great game developer. Because like I don't want to have PoE 2 turn into PoE 1 where at the end of it, you're running through at 380% movement speed, and then you're one-shotting things that you didn't even know existed. Like, that's something that I don't want to see happen, because I feel like the game already made that mistake, and if you like that kind of gameplay, I think PoE 1 is already there for you, and it's going to be continuously developed, and that's fine, but I don't think that that's and the reason why, so here's the reason why. It's that when you give the player like astronomical power levels, you also have to create astronomical threats and dangers. I think that the way that PoE 1 kills you is oftentimes really cheesy, unfair, and unfun. Very rarely in PoE 2 have I died, and I was like, oh, no. I always know what the reason is. Because I suck. Like, I die. I play like a fucking idiot. I died. That's what happens.
Of that, probably turn the currency a little bit up. I'm not saying to make the game easier. This is specifically a point of feedback that when I hear this, people are like, I don't want the game to be easier. I want it to be difficult. I agree. I agree with that.
I think that the game is in a very good place for difficulty, but I think that recalibrating difficulty to be higher, punishing mechanics to be lower, so players can take more chances, learn more intuitively, and then become better at the game as a result of that, creates the same net difficulty in a way that makes the game more fun.
But my argument here is not, let's dumb down the bosses, let's remove skills from the bosses, let's make the bosses do less damage. I think we should take the player opportunity, not power, the opportunity to make player power should be upped a little bit so that you're rewarded on those opportunities in actually making something.
Well, and it's also like, I mean, if you get a bad roll and you get bad gear, if you're a warrior, time to eat dicks. Yep, now you're a dick eater. Now, if you're a witch, you just wait until you go to Act 2 and you'll be fine anyway. But especially for the weaker classes that are like early on, upgrades matter a lot.
Opportunities. Again, I don't think the answer to this is just go and increase the damage numbers of all of the moves, increase the base attack speed of all of the moves, make your character have higher armor base. No, I'm saying what we should do is increase your opportunity to be able to interact with the systems that make your character stronger, so that newer players can get engaged with these systems, learn the systems, and be less frustrated in their gameplay. That is just my opinion currently. You're welcome to disagree. I would love to see your comments down below in terms of how you guys are feeling about the gameplay. I'm loving it a lot. You're welcome to come by the live stream, and I will answer any questions that I have the answer to. Links down below. Have a wonderful day.
I pretty much agree with everything
Would
that
you like
said.
to have healthier guns?
Like, I'm going to be honest. I pretty much agree with everything. I'm loving it. Yeah, I am too. Like, I mean, I'm very positive about the game. Like, as I said before, I've been playing PoE like ever since 2012, and I do think that this version, this version of PoE is probably one of my favorite versions of the game.